Put simply, Star Trek Discovery isn't very good. If you like this show, I'm perfectly happy for you, and I don't want to denigrate your experience, but I personally found these two first episodes to be horrendous. What a disappointment for the first Star Trek series in 12 years. I decided not to make any videos on this until I actually saw the show. I decided to reserve judgment, even though trailer after trailer looked terrible. And, looking at the initial reviews on YouTube and online, I found myself asking, did I really watch the same show as these people? Some seem to be praising it as the second coming, as the best Star Trek ever. What the hell? But then, of course, these were all people who had early access to the first two episodes, and there seemed to be very little critical analysis going on. But I'll cover more on this later. Then, as the days progressed, we started to see the views of real YouTubers, and they were not good. Most that I follow on a regular basis seem to hate this show as much as I did. Now a bit of background. I've been a Star Trek fan all my life, although my interest has waned considerably since Enterprise went off the air in 2005. After Enterprise, I thought the show needed a long rest. Many fans were burnt out, and it seemed to be suffering from a severe case of franchise fatigue after being on the air for 18 years straight. We did have the Kelvin Timeline movies, but I don't really consider those Star Trek. They are more just flashy science fiction movies. My concern about this series pretty much began from its inception. Almost everything about this show is wrong. Before going into the specific problems with the show, let's talk about CBS's streaming service. Now, full disclosure, I'm in Canada, and to the best of my knowledge, we're the only country that doesn't have to pay for a streaming service to watch this show. Discovery is broadcast on Space on regular cable, and if we want to watch it after the fact, the episodes are available on our regular on-demand service. In most other places, it's available through Netflix, but if you live in the US, you pretty much got screwed. You can watch the first episode, which ends on a cliffhanger, and then you have to pay a monthly subscription fee if you want to get the rest of the series. None of the previous 4 series did this. They had full 2-hour series premieres. This was nothing but a money grab, and quite frankly, reprehensible as hell. To be honest, if I didn't already get the show included with my cable package, I don't think I'd be watching much past episode 1. I will give it this, however. The CGI was decent, but it seems this is where the entire budget went because it sure as hell wasn't spent on writing. I will also give credit to Michelle Yeoh, who I think did a fantastic job as Captain Philippa Georgiou. Spoilers ahead, you've been warned. She's the only good character in these 2 episodes, and she dies at the end of the second episode. Just great. Now, let's talk about the way these episodes were shot. What the hell is with the angles? They remind me of Battlefield Earth or some bastardized version of the Abrams films, complete with lens flares. They made me seasick. The uniforms also look like crap. Whoever designed them needs to be thrown out the nearest airlock. Also, the insignia in this time period refers only to the Enterprise. If you remember in the original series, each ship had their own insignia, and this is supposed to take place 10 years before. It isn't until after the original series that it became standardized for all of Starfleet. So basically, the insignias are wrong and completely out of canon with the rest of Star Trek. Now, let's talk about the prequel problem. The Star Trek universe seems to end with the final season of Voyager, with its final coda being the disaster that was Star Trek Nemesis. This was 15 years ago, and we still don't know what happens beyond this point, which is infuriating. Instead, we are, for the 3rd time, being offered a prequel or series that is set in Star Trek's past. We've had Enterprise, the Kelvin Timeline, and now Discovery. What happened to moving forward? Why is this now a bad thing in the Star Trek universe? Unfortunately, Discovery pays so little attention to the source material that it could actually be considered as taking place after Nemesis. The technology definitely seems to be more advanced, and there's no way I believe that this is supposed to take place 10 years before the original series. At least on Enterprise, the producers went out of their way to make it look as if the series takes place after our time but before the original series. Instead, we have things like the Holocommunicator, which wasn't introduced until Deep Space Nine, a century later in the Star Trek timeline. Now let's get on to the biggest problem with this series. Its main character, Michael Burnham, played by Sonequa Martin Green. This character is horrible. She is undeservedly confident, condescending, and self-righteous, and we spent half of these 2 episodes hearing about how great she is. Sound like a modern-day SJW, anyone? She refuses to take the captain's hand during the second episode because respect apparently has to be earned. She is raised by Vulcans, yet somehow seems completely emotionally unstable and unconnected. Now, let's talk about the situation at the end of the first episode. Burnham decides that, based on past Vulcan experience, even after she is warned by Sarek that the best course of action is to fire on the Klingons. When Georgiou disagrees, she takes matters into her own hands, uses the Vulcan neck pinch, and incapacitates the captain. She then tries to get the bridge crew to fire. Luckily, she sucks at the Vulcan neck pinch, and Georgiou is able to stop her in time. Doesn't the military shoot you for this kind of bullshit? Let's also talk about her logic, or lack thereof, at the end of episode 2. She warns the captain that if they kill T'Kuvma, or whatever his name is, they turn him into a martyr. If they capture him, they weaken his cause. And what does she do? After Georgiou is killed by T'Kuvma, this, quote, logical hero can't control her emotions and kills him, thereby starting the war. Why would anyone like this character? She's horrible. At least she pays a price for a decision, but then it looks like the consequences will only be short-term. Every other Star Trek series, the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise were ensemble shows. Yes, they would center around the captain, but he or she wasn't the only focus. We would be introduced to the crew in the pilot episode and watch them evolve as the series progressed. Episodes would always alternate between characters. With Discovery, the show revolves around this thoroughly unlikable character. In fact, aside from the cowardly second officer, we don't see any of the regular cast or the Discovery itself until the third episode. Outside of Yo's character, nobody in these 2 episodes matters, and they are all completely forgettable. This whole 2-part episode could easily be a pre-title sequence, kind of what we saw with Deep Space Nine. We don't need to know the whole story. All this does is show that Discovery and the rest of what will be the main cast is superfluous to Burnham. Star Trek has always been a space opera that is driven by a full cast of characters. I have a feeling this is not going to happen here. Now let's talk about what they've done to the Klingons. The redesign looks ridiculous. They can barely talk through the mouthpieces, and all their dialogue is in Klingon with subtitles, which gets really annoying after a while. Also, they no longer seem to be about honor, which is what so many people loved about them. They now seem to be about racial purity. And why is this, you ask? Because, apparently, this iteration of the Klingons is meant to represent Trump supporters. Yep, way to alienate half your fan base, idiots. And now, let's look at some other things in the episodes that annoyed the living hell out of me. What the hell was with that Jedi-inspired mind meld? When has this ever happened in Star Trek before? Now, Sarek can communicate telepathically across vast distances? Really? How about that scene early in the first episode, where they go to investigate the mysterious object? I mean, couldn't you have just sent a probe, a shuttle, or moved the ship, whose name I forget because I don't care, closer? This is just a lazy excuse to get Burnham to kill a Klingon. Contrived and inexcusably lazy writing. Let's talk about the title sequence. It looks like shit. It looks like it was designed by a subpar first-year graphic design student. What the hell? How about that Briggs sequence? Really? We can trick computers with logic now? And I'm no scientist, but how does Burnham seem fine after being vaulted into the vacuum of space? Now, just for fun, let's take a look at what the press is saying about this show, both before and after it aired, and let me know if you detect a theme here. For alt-right trolls, Star Trek Discovery is an unsafe space. From Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Discovery, Star Trek's diversity is a form of activism. No, it's a fucking TV show, and really you're comparing this shit to Martin Luther King? Star Trek effortlessly demonstrates why TV needs more diversity. Star Trek Discovery Star replies to the show's racist critics. Star Trek Discovery viewers praise the new series for diversity as Sonequa Martin Green is the first woman of color to play lead role. Star Trek introduces first same-sex couple. Star Trek Discovery embarks on a voyage of diversity and tolerance. In a quantum leap, Star Trek becomes a female enterprise. Inside Star Trek Discovery, the franchise's answer to the Trump era. Can Discovery make Star Trek the most woke show on TV again? Yep, because there's never been a female or person of color on the show before ever. Star Trek Discovery creators. Our Klingons are secretly Trumpsters. Star Trek Discovery's Klingon War storyline will highlight social divides in Trump's America. Unless, of course, you're a white male down on your luck. Then you can fuck off. And I could go on, but I think I've made my point here. Critics and insiders are not looking at this show for what it is. They're looking at it for what it represents, or what they think it represents. There are indeed many people who really like these 2 episodes, and all the more power to them. But for myself and many traditional Star Trek fans, this is not Star Trek. While Star Trek has always been about diversity and reflecting the current political climate, none of the previous 5 series or 13 movies have ever been this heavy-handed. The other series also focused on stories and characters first, and this seems to have been brushed aside. This show does not come close. In fact, it's not even in the same league as the original series The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, considered by many to not only be the best Star Trek series, but perhaps some of the greatest television series of all time. It can't even hold a candle to Voyager Enterprise, considered by many to be the lesser 2 Star Trek series. Now, this is only the first 2 episodes, and we haven't even met the rest of the crew or even seen the ship yet, which is part of the problem. Maybe these 2 episodes were a blip and the show will get better, but I highly doubt it. But I guess we'll find out soon. And that's all for today. So, as always, everyone, thank you for watching, and have a great day.